But that's what I hope for everyone, that, that the warrior can be fueled by this energy in a very good way, and that you can accept and embrace your archetype in this time, like all this Aries energy, all this Leo energy as a shining warrior, and let that fuel you in a way that is heroic and transformative and light bringing and happy. And it doesn't have to be awful.
Welcome to the Feminine Alchemy Podcast, where we explore the truth about the feminine, the peaceful, the wild, and the visceral. I'm your host, J.N. Behringer, joined by my co-hosts, Julie Dean Richards and Kaylee Rose. Each week, we explore the deep mysteries of the feminine and help listeners apply them to their daily lives in a practical way. Join us to unlock the hidden wisdoms your soul has been waiting for.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Feminine Alchemy. I'm J.N. Behringer, and we've got our co-hosts here, Kaylee Rose and Julie Dean Richards. Say hi.
Hello. Hello.
This is one of those fantastic times of year where we talk about the eclipse portal. So everybody gets so excited about the eclipse portal because you can do 18 months worth of personal development work in 2 weeks. And today we are going to talk about what those 2 weeks are kind of going to be flavored. So without further ado, before we get jumping right into the chart, is there anything anyone would like to share?
Specific to the eclipse portal, or is this like a confessional now?
Oh, I feel like it's been so long since we've seen each other all 3 in a row. So I feel like we need to do a little bit of get to know you, but I don't even know what to ask.
Let's see. Well, just a TMI, everyone. On the full moon, I got my first bleed after having a baby. So that's my exciting news.
That is exciting news.
Yay!
Bleeding as we speak, it's feminine alchemy. I guess if I can't talk about it on this podcast, I don't know where I can talk.
Right?
I'm in the middle of the cosm right now. My friend Meredith, who's been on this podcast before, she'll probably come on again, talks about the cycle and things like that. She always talks about the menstrual part of it, your actual bleed, as like your inner temple. It's like your time and your inner temple, and like time to receive downloads. So I'm extra ready to receive some downloads about this eclipse portal and see what comes through, everybody.
Super special time, and you get to share it with the whole podcast. Oh my goodness, I love it.
That's right.
You guys are so lucky.
Better believe it.
Also, it's interesting, it was on the full moon that you started. Because I always associate the new moon with the bleed cycle. So it's, to me, very poignant that it was on the full moon. Not that it was like around the full moon. No, I started on the day of. So it's interesting to me. But that's so cool. Congratulations, Julie.
Oh, thank you. You know what they say about, if you're bleeding on the full moon, then you're kind of in the archetype of the medicine woman. You're in your Black Moon Lilith phase. So I'm feeling it. I'm feeling that. And if you bleed with the new moon, you're in the right side of I shouldn't say the right, but the more usual part of the cycle of being on the maiden side. So today you get Black Moon Lilith me. You get the medicine woman version of me. So that's where we're at. But I will say it's very close to 6 months after, which is a really, like, hormonally, that's a good time to start your cycle up again. So I feel good about that.
Yeah. Kaylee, what's going on with you?
Let's see, what is going on with me? I graduated from pelvic floor physical therapy post baby and post blood clot craziness. And I am probably graduating from regular physical therapy. So it's been very interesting. I can feel that there's a part of me that has this like apprehension to talk about this upcoming eclipse portal because the last fall eclipse portal, last fall,
Mhm.
I was hospitalized during that. It was this huge ordeal for me, and my life has changed in so many ways. It's just been interesting as just the past few days, griefs that I thought that I had put to rest, that I had processed through have come back up. Realizations of things that I probably shouldn't do now because of changes to my body and being on a blood thinner and like all these other things are coming up that I was like, "Whoa, where is this all coming from?" And then having this kind of this retrospective of like, "Hey, I'm phasing out of physical therapy and look how far I've come." Like almost a year ago, I couldn't walk. I couldn't walk without a walker, and even going from, like, the hospital bed to the bathroom that was a couple feet away was excruciating, and then just being reminded, like, yeah, there was a time I couldn't do all the things that I'm doing now, and even though there are still some things that I can't do and some things that are harder than they used to be and probably always will be, I've come so far, and my body has come so far. And so while I feel almost this sense of trepidation with this upcoming eclipse portal, I also recognize like, hey, all of this is intended for my good, even though sometimes it really is confusing or it really sucks. I can still choose into how I want to interpret everything that happens or doesn't happen. And it's helpful to have that reminder.
Mm, love it. That was such a good kind of putting a bow on things because I'm sure people are curious how you're feeling, how you're healing. So thank you for sharing all that. Well, as for me, I've had the worst summer.
No.
Amen. Amen.
As
Amen.
I know, exactly. I'm this is like fantastic for someone who hosts a podcast where we talk about the power of, you know, the unseen world and divine and astrology. I'm in like a dark side of the moon part of my life where it's like nihilism and apathy. So not bad. It's more like I trust enough that there is a divine that will hold me through my lack of belief and I can just kind of fall into that and be okay that no one's going to lash out at me. Like there's no guy in the sky that's going to be like smite you because you are having a tough time believing in unseen things, right? I know that like there's some part of me I think is like, okay, there is something bigger, but what does that mean for me in this phase of my life? There's some of that. Very yeah, very Plutonian, obviously, because 'cause I'm in my Pluto square Pluto, just kind of like counterculture lifestyle. Not counterculture, what is that word? Rebellion. Pure rebellion against, like, literally everything. So but this summer has been really tough, juggling working from home and having, all the same responsibilities as last year when I didn't have a job and, of course, my husband's been there through all of that. He works too. So what does that look like? And we've had some amazing help and we've had some like crazy stuff go on. And I'm just like, I don't care anymore. It's fine. Everything's fine. It's not fine. So I think that from that perspective, it's kind of been a journey of maybe astrology means nothing. And that's actually been an additional powerful realization because then I come back to astrology with that perspective of it meaning nothing. And it's like, no, these are the things it means. When you're learning, you kind of have this sort of like thinking orgasm in a way where you're like, this and this and this. Ha, I'm so smart. And now I'm just like, no, this is just what it is, and I've taken all of that extra busyness out. So all of my challenges have been almost entirely mental and stress related. There's a lot in the real world, but not like with Kaylee, what you're dealing with, which is like your real body is dealing with some stuff. And Julie's like, I'm bleeding. And I'm like, I thought a lot. I had a lot of thinking this last 6 weeks, and it's crazy, guys. But let's talk about this eclipse portal. My favorite thing about astrology is that the point, the biggest takeaway is not to predict the future or obsess over the past, but to see the reflection for what it is on the internal world. And if that is not the guiding light in whatever practice of astrology you're practicing, then it's all speculative because you have nothing to line it up against. Sure, there have been some really crazy predictors using astrology. I would probably argue there's more information they're receiving that has maybe something to do with astrology, but it's not purely in the astrology. And that's just the thing they're talking about. Anyways, but if you're not using it for personal development, then there's no reason to really use it at all, in my opinion. And that's probably a big limb that I'm going out on. So 'cause I know there's a lot of people out there who are like, "This is what I use it for."
No, I think it's a good reflection. The only reason it means something is it means something to help develop you, right? Like that's the point, the big point to help you and all the other stuff. It's really cool and can be helpful in all the other ways. But yeah, this tangible reflection tool is the most accessible piece and the most important piece, I think.
I also love, Jan, that you were just honest. You're like, nihilism and apathy in astrology means nothing. And also I'm okay, but I'm not okay. Like, that is so relatable. And not everybody is willing to say, like, hey, I am having an existential crisis. Or, hey, this thing that I've put so much time and energy into, right now I'm questioning whether it's even legitimate. And, in a week from now, a month from now, maybe I'll be like totally fine. But right now, I don't know. Because I guess like in smaller chunks, in smaller snippets and snapshots, I've been experiencing some of that too this summer where it's like, hey, this thing that I believed in, what is that?
Yeah.
Is that real? I don't even know right now. And when we put too much weight on that, it can get so heavy and so scary, and people don't want to go there. But if it's more like, hey, this is a thing I'm experiencing, I guess we'll see where it goes and what I decide to do with it, that really shifts how things play out. And I think it's a much more empowering way to go through life, though it's not always easy to choose into that.
No.
Well, also, like, curiosity, right? Like, curiosity is more of an answer, like, it's okay that you have when you're going through existential crises, it it's okay to be curious about them rather than just to be like, "Okay, let's throw the baby out with bathwater. Let's get rid of everything in my life," and to be honest. Curiosity also allows you to be honest, which is really important, and, of course, you know what I'm gonna say to bring this back to astrology a little bit, but, like, all these feelings are very Neptune and Aries kind of.
Right. Because Aries and Neptune are the most like don't understand each other possible. Like, what do you mean it's all nothing and everything is means nothing, but also everything is everything?
Mhm. Well, if
Yeah.
I imagined, like, what Aries would think of, what its belief system might be, it would be closer to nihilism in so many ways because Aries is like, "Go, do it. I am the pioneer. Everything depends on your grit. Everything depends on your body. Everything depends on the self, and, like, you and what you're doing and reality," and, like
And being very present in the moment. Like the past, that's not real. The
yeah.
future, that's not real. Right now is real.
Yes, right now is real. This is the thing that's real, like, that's very Aries, putting your feet to the fire, especially in these first 10 degrees of Aries. That's what it's all
Decans.
Decans, double Mars ruled Decan. Yes, that's the whole thing is, like, this is the most Aries Decan we're gonna get, And so now this huge shift in everybody's consciousness, our belief systems, our fantasy, like what's been pulling the wool over our eyes? What have our delusions been? That's all Neptune stuff. And Neptune and Aries is just these glimpses of, whoa, what if I was wrong and everything? It's so funny you say this because I think it's probably a global thing right now. I've been grappling with similar things, and you all know why, which I will reveal in a different episode. We'll talk about what's been going down in my life. But a big part of this for me has been grappling with like, okay, what happens when I die? What is the sensation of dying? What would that be like for me? What if there isn't anything? What happens with your consciousness if you're just not there? Like, then does it matter? But you can't imagine yourself not being there. So, how is that possible?
Julie, I stopped myself from saying all these things just a few minutes ago because that has also been what's on my mind. Is just like, what does that feel like? And I thought it was just like, oh, I turned 40, and now it's like, okay, well, what am I working towards? What does it look like? Yeah.
Yeah, like the very real midlife crisis, like and that's the whole thing is I think a lot of people are probably feeling this in their own way, whether it's like disillusionment with some beliefs or going the other way and either going back to old beliefs and like resurrecting them and clinging on really tight or like finding a new belief to like really hold on to and getting really stingy about, Mars cuts things like cutting people out or cutting this off or and then there's this section, which I guess the three of us are falling into, of this existential, like, what is life really? What does it mean to be alive? And what does the end of life look like? And what do all these things, you know, as we dig deeper, what does this look like? So, I mean, it bounces all around, right? Because sometimes then I listen to like Dr. Zach Bush and I'm like, he's like, everything's going to be okay. And I'm like, everything's going to be okay. It's great. Biological systems are going to make life so great. And then it's like, but what about all this fire? So, anyway, there you go. The diatribe on consciousness over here.
I am laughing over here because, like, as you're talking about death and stuff, like, the past couple of weeks, I've felt really drawn to learning about, like, what were the practices around death of, like, my ancestors and looking at, like Irish wakes and wailing women and stuff like that. So it's like death has definitely been on the brain. It's definitely been showing up. Something else, and we're going like so off topic, and yet it feels very much like it's on topic and it will be on topic. But to talk about Neptune in Aries, another thing that I don't think people always think about is that, like, Neptune, before he was the god of the ocean, of the expansive, dissolving holder of all things, he was the god of the local spring, of the water that kept you alive, of the most foundational things for life. And so everything that we're talking about and that we're experiencing, I see that and I'm like, oh yeah, yeah. And even all these questions about water and like this city's getting close to running out of water and there's a drought here and what do we do about water? All of it. I'm like, this is the part of Neptune that has to do with fresh water, that has to do with my water, your water, our water. What are we going to do to tend to this precious thing? And I'm starting to have a very strong feeling that this eclipse portal is going to be related to all of
That's
this.
probably true. Mhm.
Anyway,
Yeah. I just so, like, one little thing is, I was reading the book, I think it was Book of Water, actually, by, Stephen Forrest, and in it, he's talking about having Aries in the 12th house. I'm sorry, Mars. I always call Mars Aries. I don't know why. I
Well,
don't confuse the names of any of the planets and signs other than Aries and Mars. But anyways, so having Mars in the 12th house. I have Mars in the 12th house, and there is this very clear awareness of the thinness of the veil between here and there, and that there's just like this cellophane wrapper around our survival at any moment. of that acuteness. And I think that it's the similar themes, right? You've got Neptune in Aries. It's very similar to Mars in the 12th house. And what the medicine is for that scenario, there's a tendency to be play it too safe and be like, oh, I'm just gonna shrink because I know how close we are to nothingness, to the veil, and how it's just like you can just slip through. So I'm going to do my best to not and live in survival. And the medicine is always that you have to do like scary things that challenge that, or scary things will happen to you. So, for example, I'm not riding roller coasters at all because I have too much cortisol in my system. So it's just not a good idea for me. But the purpose of riding a roller coaster is to push that line and give myself that ability. And he gave the example of he has Mars in the 12th house and he didn't, do anything slightly risky for a long time. And he ended up having like an airplane scare. And so it's like, okay, superstitiously, I will ride roller coasters to prevent an airplane scare. So that's kind of the medicine there. And I think it's appropriate too, because we are doing this, we're doing a lot of these scary things right now. There's a lot of scary things happening. And what you were just saying is like with the water, and like there is a lot of like sense of terrifying free fall, I think, for a lot of people. Whatever your ideological beliefs are, I think it's just very scary regardless. And I think that's actually, and I hate to say this because I find it disgusting to say this out loud, is like part of the design of that, because it's more than likely it's stuff we haven't been looking at. And now you can't look away. And now you have to look at whatever it is. And that free fall is happening in a very scary way to actually address it. So, all that to say, let's start talking about the eclipse.
To do it.
I think that's actually a really powerful segue because we're starting with a solar eclipse. And solar eclipses, like if you think about totality, like a literal totality of a solar eclipse, when things go dark and you look around, you notice things you otherwise don't notice. You have a new perspective, and not just visually, but all your senses. You hear things you normally wouldn't hear. You feel things that you normally wouldn't feel. And that literal experience is connected to the symbolic, like, okay, eclipse portal opening with the solar eclipse. It's this opportunity to view the world with fresh eyes, with different eyes, to see things you normally wouldn't see because other things catch your attention.
I think that's a really great place to start with as well. I was just talking to my sister about this before I jumped on, and we've said this before, but it had felt like for a long time we were always starting with lunar eclipses first, like that we're getting the lunar. Whether or not that's really true, that's just the way my perception of what was happening. But the wonderful thing about starting with the solar eclipse and at this time, I feel like is and this like new moon energy, right? Like this new moon energy is that we're moving forward, right? Like we can push ourselves more forward. We're starting, we're beginning. Of course, there's always resistance when you start. We've talked about this many times, but I always use, a duck or a chick trying to break out of an egg. When they hatch, when they start, there's still that resistance piece of it. But it is this sense of like, okay, we're going somewhere. Whereas like with a full moon, there's often this feeling of release. We're releasing, releasing, releasing. And now it's like, okay, we're going to pick up some steam. Sometimes the places we go when we pick up the steam is not our most favorite thing. Like if you think about the start of a book or a movie, there's always what's called an inciting incident. And the inciting incident should happen within the first 10 minutes of the movie. If it doesn't, then usually people don't like the movie. Like they're not very popular. But the inciting incident is important, and sometimes those inciting incidents can be a car crash or can be, finding out you have magical powers or, whatever has happened, right? You've been kidnapped. That's the inciting incident. And so sometimes the new moon is like, at least to me, this energy is like, okay, we're getting a new inciting incident. that's starting our journey and we can start through. And sometimes that's exciting, like the finding out you have magical powers and you're part of this lost civilization, or sometimes that can be scary, like somebody's after you, whatever that piece is. And so I am excited though that we kind of get a fresh breath. And something else I wanted to say is going back to this concept of death with this eclipse, how interesting that Pluto is, sextile Neptune, that Pluto is pushing Neptune right now in this way. And there's kind of there's that helping or triggering kind of element working between them. And I think just a little bit ago, they were like exactly sextile just a few days or a couple weeks ago. So I think that's where a lot of this feeling is coming from. But with that, during this eclipse, I would expect continuation of transformation and around beliefs, thoughts, where you're going, illusions, delusions, continuation of like how does this transform you? How are you getting pushed to transform? What are you thinking about? So that's what I'd say for the beginning of this eclipse.
Yeah. Another thing that's important about eclipses is which lunar node is the eclipse happening by. And so this particular one's happening by the south node, which usually there's an element of letting go. Whenever the opening eclipse is by the south node, there is this element of like, what in your life is it time to let go of? What in your life is it time to be done with? And it's not like just drop it right now. It's like go through the entire process of whatever you need to grieve about it, to feel it in your body, to think about it, all of those things, and then let whatever it is go. And it's not always like, oh, this idea that I've lived with my whole life, I'm letting it go. It can also be, hey, this project that I've been holding really close to me for a long time, guess what? It's time for me to let it go out into the world. So even though there is very much this new start, new like inciting incident thing, there's also this like, and you probably got to let go of some stuff in order to really move with that. But Jan, you were saying something.
Totally different, saying something totally different. The first thing that we need to bring up, because there's just something really interesting going on with Pluto as well. The first thing we really need to bring up though is this is all happening except for the south node is in Virgo, but the sun, the moon, the midheaven, and all these other things, so many things, oh my goodness, are in Leo. Jupiter's in Leo. Mercury is in Leo.
Think has just barely made it, just barely. So you're right, Jan. It's like literally everything's in Leo.
Oh, you're right. The node is in Leo. You're right. Yeah, the South Node is in Leo. So all this stuff is going on in the spotlight. You
Mm-hmm.
can't hide from it. And the thing people love about Leo are the fruits of Leo. It's the buoyancy, the bubbliness, the showmanship, the hilarity. All of that stuff is a downstream product of the most uncomfortable stuff, which is vulnerability. And being seen doing something that you're uncomfortable being seen doing, or that you didn't know someone was watching, right? Like the whole dance like no one's watching, but you know they are. You know somebody's watching. And to have that on display, your most vulnerable things that could be misconstrued as weakness, that could be misconstrued as, evil, anyone with a existence has the right to judge you because that's just part of life. They all have their own minds. And so, like, having this much stuff in Leo is just pointing directly at saying it's going to be so vulnerable and so uncomfortable. And it's a solar eclipse in the traditionally sunniest sign. And having that is like, oh, we're going to look specifically at those upstream pieces. We are not looking at the downstream fun times. We're starting with those upstream pieces. How are you feeling seen? How are you feeling vulnerable? If it's not worth it, if it doesn't have that like scary edge, then it's not going to matter. So, where are you feeling that scary edge? And yeah, no one likes to hear that. So, ew, gross.
Very true. I think that's a very good thing, and I think also combining both a little bit of what you and Kaylee were saying, it's so interesting to see because, like, when I was talking about the new moon, I watched Kaylee brush her neck. I was like, "Oh, no, I'm saying it wrong." I could read her body language, and I was like, "Oh, dang it, she's right. The south node is back there. It's the south node."
It's not that you're wrong, it's that there's layers. You weren't wrong.
Oh, it's okay to be wrong, actually, but it is true that you're having both. I like that you pointed that out, right? Like, and what Jayan is saying also that, during a new moon where the sun is being blocked out in the sunniest sign, right? There's this like, oh, we're gonna see the totality. Like, we're gonna look at that other stuff. It's gonna be vulnerable. You may not feel like you like this shiny part. Like, this is gonna be the part where even though you're shining and in leadership, they're not necessarily seeing all the parts you would want them to see downstream, like Jay uh, talked about. They're seeing all the layers that are vulnerable and the things you need to release and let go. And I would say the sun, the moon, and the south node, all three of those are in the third decan of Leo, which this decan is famous for um, making you tough as nails, really, because it's all about, you're on top, you have the crown, but everybody wants to take the crown from you. And so they want to go after these pieces of you, but you will be victorious, right? Like, there is this sense of victory. Just know that in yourself, where you're like, I'm being vulnerable. I don't like being vulnerable. I hate what people are seeing. But also, if you take this time and allow yourself to love your shadow, these parts that they're pointing out, the judgment that they're pointing out, or, hopefully it's not this harsh, but if it is, just and all the stuff that maybe you are seeing of yourself, maybe it's not even somebody else, maybe it's you seeing this of yourself. But I hope that you can integrate your shadow and love your shadow and also just have the attitude of like, F it. I don't care what you think. This is an opportunity to say, I just don't care. Like, I can only be myself. And how perfect for the new moon when the sun and the moon are conjunct so close together. It is like body and soul together, right? Like, everything together, aligned. And so this is the time to just be like, F it. I don't care. And you might just be so exhausted of everything that you can't help but say, I'm going to do this anyway. You might not like it, but I just have to be myself anyway. So I hope you'll give yourself some permission there. And then one last thing, just talking about that other portion of everybody else who's in Leo, like Mercury and Jupiter, they're on the beginning of the story of Leo. They're in that first part of Leo, which is all about boldness, but it's the childlike part that at times can be so bold, but also then feels like they have to hide their face and be so bold and then feels like they must hide their face. So Jupiter is there in that helping capacity, expanding your ability to communicate. I mean, it's a loose conjunction, but expanding your ability to communicate, expanding your ability to shine, but don't be surprised if it's like, I'm shining and playful. And then like, oh, I have to hide my face because people don't, I have to walk away.
Dang
So
it. This is like my MO.
there you go. This is for you, Kaylee. Here it is.
Yeah. But my south node's in Leo, so yep. Hi, it's Kaylee. If you've been listening to this show for a while, you already know about the feminine power line. Black Moon Lilith, the Eve point, that axis in your chart that holds both the exiled feminine and the desiring feminine. You know the words. But there's a difference between knowing the words and actually turning the light on. The Feminine Powerline self-paced course is where that happens. It's not a lecture, it's an experience. Guided journeys, somatic reflections, and a full reference library of interpretations for your exact placements, so you can sit with your own chart and actually feel it, and reclaim it. Women who've gone through the course say the same thing. I didn't expect it to hit that deep. The first 25 students get founding student pricing at $97. After that, it's $147. You can find the link to check it out and to purchase in the show notes of this episode. If the feminine power line has been calling you, this is where you answer.
What else do we see going on?
There's a pretty tight grand trine. Do we want to talk about that?
Yeah, let's do it. You start.
So we've got Pluto at 3 degrees Aquarius. We've got Uranus at 5 degrees Gemini. And we've got Venus at 5 degrees Libra. So it's a grand air trine. Like I said, pretty tight, especially because there's 2 larger planets here. And I think that Venus is probably working overtime to soften this for her very best. Venus is in Libra, which is one of her signs. And that is very much the sign of softening things and making things comfortable for everybody, which between Pluto and Uranus, even I think a trine can be tricky. So it's good that Venus is in that mix, making things a little gentler for everybody, but we're still going to see those themes of dramatic transformation in all kinds of intellectualism, in all kinds of relational things where it has to do with communication and conversation and innovation and seeing multiple perspectives, but just dramatic transformation. And with Venus being there, there's a huge potential for value to show up. So it's not just gratuitous change for the sake of change, terrifying terribleness. There's a value here that is super important. And it's not just monetary, it's also relational. Because remember, those two things are best friends. Money and love are two sides of the same coin. And when we try to separate them, then that's when we start sneaking into the power over paradigm. Anyways, that just came to me. I have to dive into that more later.
No, that's like exactly right, because usually Pluto and Venus trine, so when there's a trine between Venus and Pluto, traditionally that can be a sign of rising in power. That can be a sign of getting lots of money and abundance, like smiling down on you in many ways, because there's such a vast transformation in wealth. But in this case, in these air signs, I would say maybe we are looking more closely at relational abundance coming through, and an abundance of thought and value coming through information that's being passed, but it's gonna all get shooken up by Uranus, right? Like, he wants to innovate on this, so weird stuff weird stuff happening with relationships that's also transformative, but good, can be good, can seem bad, but can be good, so there's a lot of
Oh my
influence
gosh.
there.
Sorry. I just noticed something. I wasn't trying to interrupt you. I just noticed that it's not only a grand trine air, but it's also a kite with Neptune as the kite
Mhm.
point. Like the whole structure is grounded in this like intuition and ephemeral quality as it relates to the body and what is your life and how are you living it.
And all that nihilism we were talking about.
And the nihilism. Yes. The nihilism is grounding you.
That's kind of true.
It's like a double kite. It's a double kite with, Pluto holding on to one tether and then up there at Mercury, and then this kite with, Neptune at the bottom. Mercury Mercury's yeah, in that sextile with Uranus and a sextile with Venus. So, it's a lot of, like, I gotta do something about all this energy twice. It's not enough that all this value and all this stuff is happening, but I've gotta make it have to do something with it. I have to, make it productive. So, huge amount of like, exactly what Kaylee was saying, there's a lot of stuff happening with Neptune being that kind of grounding force in the delusion, the fantasy. What are we thinking and doing? Like, how do our thoughts lead to reality? How do our spiritual proclivities or artistic proclivities make us a pioneer and lead us? going on, and also Pluto, which is asking the question of like, how do these things transform us and how are we going to talk about them transforming it? Sorry, I'm sure you had more to say, Kaylee. I interrupted you.
Oh, no, you're just fine. There's actually something else in this chart that has been, like, yelling at me, so I'm going to stay quiet until I can talk about that.
Go for it.
Okay.
I think we talked about that double kite and let's woo, hello. So go for it.
Okay. So, when I was looking over this chart before we came here to start recording, I noticed that Ceres and Mars are conjunct in Cancer at 0 degrees Cancer. Then while someone else was talking, it suddenly hit me like, "Oh, and that's part of a yod." So, let's talk about it. So, Ceres and Mars conjunct, Ceres has a lot to do with food supply. It has to do with love and grief and mothering, nurturing, nourishing. Are you allowing those things for yourself? Are you giving it all the way to other people? And Mars is actually out of bounds. It doesn't show on this chart, but Mars is out of bounds in this chart. And when a planet is out of bounds, it goes to extremes. And so it's like we're potentially going to experience extremes in fighting for or advocating for things related to nurturing and nourishing and the food supply. And things could get very interesting. Also, Mars wants to fight for what it loves. If you give it something to fight for instead of something to fight against, the results are usually a little bit better. And that conjunction is quincunx Juno, which then is quincunx the south node. And then there's a sextile between the south node and the Mars Ceres conjunction. So that's what makes it a yod. And so you've got all this like south node, like, okay, do we have some baggage around how we show up and shine? Do we have some hidden gifts around that we haven't maybe accessed? Then it's also got everything I talked about with Ceres and Mars, and it funnels down into this point of Juno in Capricorn at 29 degrees, 45 minutes Capricorn. So there's this sense of like, what are you committed to? What structures, what physical things, what version of responsibility are you really bought into? Are you really, truly committed to, come hell or high water? And at that energetic degree, is it worth it? Did you want to change your mind this time? Or do you want to stick with it? And so that's the apex of the yod. And the apex of a yod is usually where we feel things the strongest. And then the release point of the yod is 180 degrees away from that. So that would be 29 degrees of Cancer. So really looking at, okay, how am I nurturing? How am I experiencing my emotions? How am I experiencing all things Cancerian? How am I experiencing that? And do I want to keep experiencing it that way, or do I want to make a shift? Am I making choices just from comfort? And if I am, is that okay? Does that have to be a problem? Is it a problem? I don't know. Like these are questions that you have to ask yourself when there's a yod. Because a yod is often referred to as either the finger of God or the finger of fate. It's basically like, hey, will you almost pay this tithe on your life? When it's in your natal chart, it's very much a tithe like, hey, will you do this one thing no matter what? And when it's in an eclipse chart, when it's in a transit chart, it's more of this collective, all of us, like, hey, will we look at this? Will we look at this and grow from it instead of deciding that I'm bad or you're bad or that person's bad because of all these energies moving together? Hopefully that all made sense.
Yeah, and also I want to highlight Juno's experience of legality and focus on the legal terms and having that in Capricorn. These are deeper questions we're going to ask, and I will say right now, like I have been doing more legalese paperwork this year than ever, which I think is really interesting in light of this conversation because it's in the sign of like businessy stuff, right? Those structural things that you're doing. And it's the legality of things that are also standing up for what's right. It's not just well, you're going to sit down and do technical work. So it's very interesting.
There's an integrity piece.
Yes, there's an integrity, there's a community piece, there's a feminine, taking care of the feminine and rights of the feminine piece. And it's like, are you going to pay attention to that too? So very, very interesting.
Yeah. Do we want to talk about the midpoint of the eclipse portal at all, or just jump to the lunar eclipse that closes things?
Oh, right. We have a second chart. Yeah, let's jump right to the lunar eclipse.
Okay. I'll just say, for anybody who wants to know, the midpoint of this eclipse portal is August 19th at 27 degrees of Scorpio. And so there's this opportunity for a lot of healing, especially like healing of the heart, the emotions, and all of that around 27 degrees Scorpio. So look at your chart wherever that is. I'm kind of excited / nervous because my ascendant is 27 degrees Scorpio, so this should be interesting. But that's all I'll say about the midpoint chart because we do need to move on to the lunar eclipse chart. So this is the 28th. Well, it's in UTC, so it's actually the 27th where I am, and I think where you guys are.
So it's happening in the middle of the night in the US. Yeah, I think that it's really funny when people look at a chart and they're like, well, all these things are in one sign, and that's normal because normal is normal. But no, this is 2 weeks later. And remember, we had like 5 or 6 things in Leo, and now we only have 3 left, which is the South Node, Hygeia, and Jupiter. And the sun has already moved on.
Yes. And then there's a bunch in uh Aries instead.
Yes, yes, a lot of things have moved into Aries. So this is a nearly entirely different chart, you know? And it's only 2 weeks later. And I just want people to remember that stuff moves even more than you even twins will often have very different things in their charts, and it shows up in their commonalities and differences in how they live and how they process things and how they function. So that's my one little plug there.
I'll just talk a little bit about like the basics of this chart as far as it being a lunar eclipse for anyone who is listening and not familiar with lunar eclipses. With a lunar eclipse, the Earth is between the sun and the moon, and it casts its shadow onto the moon. And so the moon ends up looking like it's covered in blood or gray shadows or kind of brown. And so that can be very symbolic of like your unconscious wounds, even ancestral wounds coming to the surface, and and a potential for very deep, even generational renewal, and all of that coming to the surface, not to freak you out because there's blood on the moon, but to give you this opportunity for healing and for cleansing. I don't know, thinking about the blood on the moon, just keep thinking about blood mysteries and the miracle of the female body with menstruation, with being able to make milk from blood and being able to give birth, and just how tied to blood the female body is. And even though in a lunar eclipse, it's like the moon is eclipsed, so it's like kind of covered, but it's not. It's a little different from a solar eclipse because it's not so much covered by an actual physical body like with a solar eclipse. Instead, it's covered with a shadow that is inviting us to look at our shadow. And so this particular lunar eclipse, like any lunar eclipse, there will be an element of like, oh, let's look at your shadow. But where this one is taking place near the north node, the entire eclipse portal is moving from south node to north node. And so there's very much the sense of like liberation. Like, what are we going to shed so that we are more free? So that we can make choices. And this closing eclipse is related very much to that. How can shadow work actually free you? I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that, Jan.
It's good. No, it's always good. So we're also moving from a high concentration of Leo energy into a high concentration of Aries energy, which sort of tells me, okay, you've had all this insight onto how you appear and all of this vulnerability, and then it goes, okay, what are you going to actually do with that? And one of the most interesting times of life is when either Mars is in Capricorn or Saturn is in Aries, because those two things are like Energizer bunny energy, where you have structure and the energetics to actually carry out the structure in a really meaningful way. You also have supporting in there Pallas Athena, who's like super good at strategy, right? And then you have Vesta in the mix, giving that warmth, giving that fire, giving that sense of and echoing that Leo energy that we had just come from, which I think is it's just so powerful because energy of Aries is always thought to be this just sow your seed, just do some things, whatever it is. But what I'm seeing is it's actually as we move towards the close of this eclipse, we're going to see some strategic actions that we're going to know what to do. It's not just this like do something and throw a spot on the wall and figure it out. There's clarity. There's, okay, I know exactly what I need to do. I know the plan, and my plan is flexible. And that feels, I think, empowering more than like, I'm so awesome. It's this, I feel empowered because I can see a way forward. That sounds nice, though. I'm really hopeful for that. Sounds great. I'd love that to happen. Everything I said, I will see if I believe it in the future.
I hope so. Yes, I hope that it is pressing forward. And I think that, yeah, this is a lot of action. As we've moved more into fire and air, there is a lot of thought and action going on rather than feeling and being happening. Although I would say that one thing we should point out here is that this eclipse is taking place on the Virgo Pisces axis. So it's the last one on this Virgo Pisces axis of the tangible and the details versus the big picture and the spiritual. And we're getting that moon feeling of in Pisces, that Piscean moon of like, how do you feel about it? Diving into the deep. How are we diving into the deep? And what are the walls that we cannot see in the labyrinth that we have created for ourselves? And kind of feeling that out versus, the sun in Virgo, which is asking all kinds of questions and thinking and planting seeds. So it's interesting to see that echo of like, okay, this is kind of the last on this rotation. So we have had, Virgo and Pisces eclipses before, and this is the last breath of that. The last breath of that is coming through here. And as Jan pointed out, that Aries piece is saying, like, okay, we've had enough feeling and being, and now we're going to take some action on that, which we'll see. One other thing I wanted to point out, which have we talked about this chart having a 0 degree Chiron in Taurus? Okay, we haven't touched on Chiron at all.
Not at all.
Chiron recently moved into Taurus for the first time this go around and will be dancing back and forth between Taurus and Aries. So we are getting a new look at our wounds and at the things that can heal us and how we can heal and teach others. And so there may be some Tarian worries, of course. All the people who are born in the 80s, I mean, not all of
The
the 80s,
70s.
the late 70s, up until 80. Well,
Until 80, like 4.
yeah, that's what I
Yeah,
thought.
so it's the Gen X is now getting their Chiron returns, and Gen X being already this like classically rebellious generation is
Mhm.
now coming to grapple with like, what the heck did I learn? What is my value? Because they all have this issue. A lot of people come to me who have Chiron in Taurus are like, I don't feel valuable. And
Mhm.
that made me overlooked as a child. And I, took that and ran with it. But what does it mean to feel valuable as a human being? Like all of this is what's coming up for a lot of my Gen X people.
Exactly, and, like, scarcity of resources.
Mm-hmm. Because the stagflation of when they were growing, like all of that. Yeah. Like I
Yeah,
said, could be a whole episode.
maybe we should have an episode just Chiron and Taurus and like what does that mean? Because this can have a lot to do with inflation and things like that, economic issues that may be coming very quickly. But for this eclipse, as far as what it means is, you have got to, I guess, see the beauty in and allow yourself to heal the scarcity mindset, I'd say, or this mindset of I'm not valuable enough, or there's not enough to go around. There's not enough for me. There's not enough that I can give or receive. I know I won't be able to receive the things that I need. So I would be, just open to that because I do think the one way this can show up at least is that like, oh, I have these new beliefs or I'm like moving through these beliefs and I want to share. I'm in the Leo limelight, like I have to share and I'm worried that after I share scarcity will come and people will not find it valuable and they won't, care about what I have to say or I might lose money. So just being aware of that and choosing to monitor your mindset a little bit. And I would say, even if there's an economic crash or something happens or whatever, it is always better to be in an abundance mindset or at least in a mindset that is about working through problems rather than staying stuck in the problem.
Love it.
Before we close out talking about this eclipse portal, there is a yod that's even more wow than the yod from the last eclipse chart. The sun is the apex of the yod at 4 degrees, almost 5 degrees Virgo. So look in your chart. If you have something at around 4 degrees Virgo, around 3 or 4 degrees Neptune, and around 3 or 4 degrees Aquarius, like any of those spots, they have to do with this yod. So the sun's the apex. Then we've got Pluto and Neptune. And so it's like, okay, there's transformation and spirituality and belief and illusion and sleuthing. What's deep down underneath all the things and it's going to be putting pressure on our identity and on our masculine energy, our ability to show up and shine in the world. And what I love is that the release point of this yod is the moon for almost 5 degrees of Pisces. Like, can you trust that you belong to everyone and everyone belongs to you, that you belong to the universe, that you are connected to everything, that anything good for someone else is good for you? And what I mean by that is like a rising tide raises all ships. And just this sense of like, oh, if I can find the beauty and the love and the connection, it's going to change me just acknowledging that it exists, and it's going to change me for the better, and it's going to change the world for the better. And even though I can't control what's going on around me, and sometimes it feels like I can't control what's going on inside of me, and sometimes I'm just really struggling, knowing that anything beautiful, anything good, anything gracious, anything worth valuing in yourself or around you is reflecting the goodness the other direction. Like if you find something good in yourself, it's telling you something about the world, about the universe. If you find something good around you, it's telling you something about you. And I think that's what this yod is an invitation to.
Well, I think that's beautiful. And you know whose birthday this is? This is Allie's birthday.
And then
Yes.
the next day, barely into the next day, is my mom's birthday, but my son's birthday, my most recent baby.
Yes, it's your baby's birthday also. The chart I'm looking at, is actually really close to your baby's birthday. But it's kind of hilarious because sorry, our dear friend Allie Duzette, she is a Virgo sun and a Pisces moon and I think she's a 4 degree too. So this is hitting her. Everyone watch out for Allie. Everybody watch out for Allie. That's hilarious, but she's coming back to that nodal. It'll be like right there. I mean her natal. It'll be very close to everything in her natal chart. So that's so funny. But also for your sweet baby Fennec, this will be his eclipse journey. So
Yes. Well, and it's interesting. So that almost 5-degree moon, like my sun and moon are at like 6 degrees Pisces. And so this is hitting pretty close again. And then my midheaven is like not that far away from where the sun will be. It's a little further away. It's at like 8 degrees. but I don't know. It's like, "Oh, that eclipse portal was intense for me, and it hit some really big things in my chart, and guess what? This eclipse portal hits some pretty big things in my chart too." And
Mm,
I have choice in, like, am I gonna go into this assuming the worst?
mhm.
Am I gonna go into this assuming the best and then potentially being disappointed? Or am I going to go into this open and curious and acknowledging the fact that there's a part of me that feels very nervous, and that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that goes for anybody who has things getting really touched by this eclipse portal, including Allie. Like, those are the options in a lot of ways.
Mhm. I love that. And I love that for you. My hope is everything that you said is true about your identity. All the good things in you as it hits this pressure on your identity will be good. Or just knowing when I looked at it in that conjunction with Mercury as well, when I when I looked at it, I was thinking a lot about how like knowing it's okay to be you. You know, knowing that you are enough, your identity is enough, you've done enough. And that's my hope with this chart is that we resolve after all of this like shining and potentially people poking at us and tribalism and all those pieces that the resolution will be I am enough. I am as I am and
Mhm.
that is enough. And like you said, I can choose my mindset. So looks like this portal is going to be very, very transformative and hopefully in a good way. Hopefully in a very good way. And just know that the pressure makes the diamond and that, beauty always comes out of everything. And that sometimes, even in really hard eclipses, the way that it plays for us is positive. It ends up being positive. This good thing, like things can be falling around you in the world and you can be having a lovely experience, tucked inside in your blanket, sipping some hot cocoa or something, or like cold iced tea right now. So that is my hope for everybody that it's good. And also the last thing I'll say is just using the fuel, being fueled in a good way, like not allowing yourself, just embracing. Cause I've talked about this with my husband about how a lot of my life has to do with Mars and Mercury. There's just like so much of that and I hate it. I don't want to do it. But he was something he said to me was like, until you embrace that archetype, because I'm like, I don't want to be a warrior, blah, 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 blah. This is not my thing. I just want to talk philosophy. I just want to philosophize and
Oh my
dance in the
gosh.
flowers.
That's so perfect though, Julie, because your feminine power lineage is the warrior poetess,
It
like in
is.
resonant
Oh my
astrology.
gosh. You're right. Oh my
So, like,
gosh.
the warrior poet, warrior poetess, like, yeah,
Yes.
you're the warrior who also wants to philosophize and somehow make it all
Yes.
beautiful and worth it.
Yes. And, like, dance in the flowers, right? I wanna wear a
Yeah.
flower crown and dance in the flower but he just said until you accept the archetype of the warrioress, you just are fighting against, and so I've been thinking about that and, like, accepting this archetype and that there are different kinds of warriors and that I don't have to be someone who's, like, out for blood all the time. I can be a protectress instead and someone
Yeah.
who is fighting in a good way and not looking. I don't have to go picking a fight, and that's how I feel about Mars sometimes. I feel like Mars wants to pick a fight. He's there, he's trying to pick a fight with you, and I'm like, "I'm not picking any fight with you, dude. We're not picking fights. We will argue civilly in court together instead." But that's what I hope for everyone that, that the warrior can be fueled by this energy in a very good way and that you can accept and embrace your archetype in this time, like all this Aries energy, all this Leo energy as a shining warrior and let that fuel you in a way that is heroic and transformative and light bringing and happy and it doesn't have to be awful.
Here, here.
So, anything you want to say to wrap up about this eclipse portal cycle?
I don't think so. That all just we covered a lot. So anyone who was listening and is like, "Whoa, what?" Just whatever stood out to you. You don't have to do all the things. You don't have to find all the things. You don't have to make sense of all the things. What stood out to you and see how it impacts you. Notice. explore this eclipse portal with some curiosity. I love how I said, "No, I have nothing to say," and then I keep talking because that's kind of how I work.
I love it when you keep talking.
I opened my mouth, made me realize I do have something to say.
I love that, and I think that's the best thing we can say is be curious. Be curious about all the things you're thinking, feeling, and know that there are waves and, what you're feeling today may not be what you're feeling or thinking tomorrow, and that's okay. Just be curious. All right. Well, I think that wraps us up for today. Thanks everybody for listening. If you haven't done this already, please go to whatever platform you're listening to and give us a 5-star review. If you feel inclined and feel like this has helped you, that is really important for us and people being able to see and understand this content. And please share with a friend. Okay, we'll see you next time. Bye.